Yes?
I'm just trying to get my head around the program relationship division
Yeah.
that's created here. And what would this model look like if program drew directly from vision?
What would it look like if program, questions for George? That's what, write this down.
I have an answer.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on your context, of course. So if you have say you're in a place where there's a huge new development going in with 100,000 new houses being built, well, you might try a church plant that starts with programs. You come in with, it'll be the big staff, big land, and you're trying to skip all those early stages and go to programs for these 100,000 new families that have moved into this development.
You could do that, but I wonder what it would mean, and this would be an interesting conversation to have, if you skip that relationship part, because remember the relationship has to do with no. The relationship, remember, has to do with evangelism, discipleship making, and lay mobilization. One is then the difference is one is task oriented and one is people oriented. One's task. Well, I know, but and that's okay. I mean, that's fine. But that's kind of the distinction we're trying to draw, because again, if I go, if it's about accomplishing a task or doing something versus transforming an individual, the relationships are transformational. The programs are about the individual. Like, okay, we had a Sunday school program. That's a program, and as we'll talk about, you'll have an opportunity later on to kind of work through this. How do I know if that program has been successful? Has it created relationships? I mean, there's a depth to it that the relationship brings. It's just more. It's not just about the numbers. Programs, in essence, are about numbers and about structures and that's why they mesh so well with management.
A difference in focus rather than.
Yes. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Any comments, reflections, questions, thoughts? Aha moments? Make sense to you? Helpful or not helpful? Have you thought about this before?
No.
I mean, is this new for you or is this old stuff?
Well,
we have a newbie. He hadn't spoken yet. We're gonna go to him. He's been so quiet back there.
Thinking about new churches and sort of the contagious missional feeling that you have in new churches and how new churches often give birth to new churches. Where in this life stage does the pregnancy come in?
I think it can come at any point. I don't know. That's a good question. I would hate to think that you would wait 20 years to birth a new church. That I think it can come at any point. Probably more, when you've got childhood and stuff. But I mean, I think that's a good question.
Do you think
that's a real good question.
After emptiness or aging?
Do what now?
Emptiness and aging. Does that fix there?
No. I don't think it. When you're on that downside of the cycle, especially when you hit retirement old age, I think starting a new church is not necessarily on your radar. I think you're more worried about redeveloping and transforming to try to get yourself back up the scale. Now, what can happen? I mean, you talk about the kinds of changes, and I don't want to talk too much about the backside of it because we're more involved in the front side. But the kinds of changes that are called for in this downslider, like continuous or stuff. Sometimes if you're not that far down the scale, you can do some kind of small changes that aren't as you don't feel you can do them kind of gradually. Sometimes you need radical change where that's why the model for this one is resurrection. When you get down here, sometimes you need to turn the page and start over. When you get down to old age. So you may birth a new church out of it, but it's not going to look anything like the church it used to be there. But that's rare. That doesn't happen very often.
Well, I think the answer to this question would be when in adulthood, if you want to stay in adulthood and you don't want to cross over that hump, that's when you start doing the rebirthing aspect because you have all four elements. Therefore, you can take pieces of all four elements and send them out to do a rebirth.
I think a lot of it has to do with your vision. I think a lot of it has to do with the size of the church. I mean, there are lots of factors, but it has to be in the DNA of the church to start out. I mean, if being a reproducible church is not a part of the vision, then it doesn't matter where you are in this thing. You're not going to. I mean, churches have to be reproducible.
Provided the church is missional, I think this adulthood stage, that's ideal for rebirth and growth.
It is.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna put Zionsville on the clock, because they've been talking about they're in that adulthood maturity stage.
Yeah.
I mean, they're smoking along. They're just doing great things, and now they're saying, okay, we need to start a new church, and so they're in a great position to do that. Talk to Glenn. Start a new church, Bob. But I think it can happen up here too. Our system's very complicated, and when you're talking about starting new churches, it's this whole thing here is just killing us. When we're trying to start new churches, because it's not easy to start a new church. If I'm a non-denominational, or if I'm a Baptist or Pentecostal, I can go out and just start one. If I'm Presbyterian, I have to have a theological degree. I have to have a 3 or 4 year degree. I have to have Presbyterian support. I have to write a grant. I have to go, and it's just not easily reproducible sometimes. Quite frankly, and I'm going to get in trouble saying stuff on camera like this. But if I'm afraid, I'm going to say it in the light. We have a very what's the word?
Systematic.
No. The word I'm thinking of is it's about our clergy. We're part of the problem.
Gatekeepers,
We are gatekeepers. Entitled. We're very entitled clergy. If I'm in other denominations, I want to go out and start a church, I have to raise my own support. I have to find my own insurance. I have to figure it out myself. I may get a little bit from a denominational kind of entity, but it's not going to be much. I'm really on the hook, and I've got a lot invested in that. For us, I need to have my Presbyterian minimum and my 30% on top of that, my health insurance, and we're risk averse in what we do. And so it doesn't, help us to start churches very easily. Because, we take years and years and years to start a church. But we don't really encourage people to go out and be tent makers.
Is the process not easier for a church to start a church than it is for the Presbyterian to start a church?
I think it probably is a little bit easier for a church to start a church, in my opinion, because depending on the church, you're talking about a church with a good DNA, hopefully, healthy DNA, reproducible DNA, that are missionally focused, and they're going to go out and start a new church, and they'll work with the presbytery, but they'll go out and get it done. I think that's a lot easier than the judicatory starting it. And so one of the emphasis, I think, in our denomination, we need to have more churches starting churches. And the only way it's really going to exponentially grow if those churches that start churches have a mind to start in other churches. And so it's kind of like that, was it the PERT commercial, or what was it? They start one and so on and so on,
It's a parent
That's how.
church. Parent church.
Yeah, parent church. Our churches, and this is, gosh, this is not where I'm going, but problem is a lot of our churches have become childless churches.
Yeah.
And disciples are reproducing. That's the basic nature of being a disciple, is to make more disciples. And a lot of our churches, for whatever reason, a long time ago, maybe it has to do with where they are here, they stopped reproducing. It's just not a part of them. They become cul-de-sacs, dead ends of the gospel. They become consumers.
But
So they're not taking it out.
part of the problem is that it takes, because we're entitled, it takes almost $500,000 to start a new church in over 5 years. That's a lot.
And that's our problem. I guarantee you the disciples of Christ aren't putting $500,000 or $500,000 into a church. I think they get, and all the statistics that I've been reading lately say that whether you give 100,000 or $1 million, there's no difference in the success rate of those churches. Also I've been reading that they talk about churches of 200 or less start more churches than churches of 1,000 or more. There's a sense that you have to have 1,000 people to be able to start a church, and no, you don't. You have to have a reproducing mindset. Sending people out. If you're a missionary, sending people out. And that's why I think you can do it in this area. If that's your mindset, if you start a church and you're saying we're going to start more churches, racial, ethnic, immigrant churches have that mindset. They're starting churches right and left, wherever their communities gather. And the other part is our churches think they have to be 1,000 members. Our churches don't have to be 1,000 members. In fact, I don't think we started a 1,000-member church in a long time. This may be like the last one. It doesn't happen very often. When we get the MDRC grants, they always have we're going to grow by 200 members a year, and we're going to be 1,000 members in 5 years.